Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or tea, sit back, and let's talk about the astrology, human design, and oh my gosh, what a week we have today, or starting today. It's amazing. This is going to be one of those weeks where you're going to hold on to your hat and literally you're just going to sit back and have to observe what's happening. A lot of things that are going to be happening over the next couple of weeks, actually through the whole month of October, are so totally out of your hands that it's going to be one of those things where you can either go along with the ride or you can, kick and scream your way through the month of October. Yesterday, I posted on my blog the energies beginning with Venus, which dominate the month of October. Happy October, everyone, by the way. I didn't say that yet. Good morning, Colleen. Good morning, Michelle. I know Michelle's on her way to work and she's only here for a little bit. But Michelle, make sure you listen to the rest of the show when you get home tonight because it's going to be one of those doozies. As I discovered, I should say I rediscovered some really fascinating information, all because yesterday I was intent on being consistent. This is my new word, consistency, in posting a blog article on Sunday and sending out a newsletter. I don't know if you guys are subscribed to my newsletter list, but if you are, you receive the newsletter. And as I was writing the October transits, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more to what's going on than meets the eyes. And literally it is compelling me to write 2 more blog articles this week because of the energies that are popping up for us in this month of October. Now, often October is a pivotal month. It is at least in recent memory, it is the month when the planet Pluto changes direction. And then it has a lot of other characteristics about it. It's that turning point of the year. It is the month that we often consider the month of the harvest. So October itself is usually fairly, busy. Halloween ends the month. And this year, Halloween is a doozy of a day. So we often think of Halloween, no, of October as being very busy. Good morning, Londa. Good morning, Mimi. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Anne. And anybody else I've missed out there, good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining me today. So let's start by talking about what we can expect for today and as the week rolls on. Literally, the void, of course, moon is plaguing us until 2 o'clock this afternoon Pacific time, which makes it, 5:01 East Coast time. And that means literally the whole day, the moon is void of course. So on a Monday, void of course moon, we like to think of Monday as our getting in gear and getting things revved up for the week. And it's not going to be that for us today. It is much more favored if you do some study, if you take it easy, if you finish up a project you've been working on. So we are beginning the week with that sort of lull kind of energy. It isn't a day certainly to go out and, start a job search or start any new projects, etc. Good morning, April. Good morning to anybody else that I'm missing out there. So we have the moon void, of course, until 2:01 Pacific time. And at that point in time, the moon moves out of Gemini and into the sign of Cancer. And Cancer then being a very much moon-driven sign, early in the week then is possibly characterized by moodiness, by ups and downs in the emotional energy. It's also very homey, sort of nurturing energy. So we start the week with the moon in Gemini, but it's not able to do a whole lot because of the void of course. And then we move into more viable energy as we get into the week when the moon moves in through Cancer and Leo and ends the week in the sign of Virgo. So that's what the moon is doing. So that means today there are no new moon type of connections. And that the only ones that we're kind of left with that happened before the moon went void, of course, is the moon in a sextile to Uranus, which can leave us with some surprises during the day today, could leave us with some ahas, epiphanies, awakening energies, and also the moon in opposition to Saturn. And that can make for that lower feeling melancholic energy that you might feel for the day. I had a really good day yesterday, Sunday. First of all, the Seahawks won. Ha ha, yes, indeed. Debbie, I hope the Pats won. I didn't hear, so you'll have to let us know whether they won or lost or if they've even played yet. So it was a good day, but it was also our Gene Keys ambassadors meeting day. And we are in like the last 2 months of the ambassador program. And I had some profound ahas yesterday around what it is that we've been learning throughout all of this. And it's funny because he actually even alluded to the fact that some people have had these, ahas peppered throughout. And I was feeling a little, not in the gang because I hadn't yet. And then suddenly, wham. And it was such a wham that I couldn't sleep last night. I just kept running my sword of individuality and my whole of my holographic profile through my mind. Kept me up literally to probably midnight, 1:00 before I could finally fall asleep because I was so energized by that. So there is a component that as we go into the month of October about self-reflection and about the looking deeper within you to find some real good truths about who you are and about what you're here to do. Now, as we look at the week ahead, people, the big news of the week is going to be the Venus retrograde, right? That happens on Friday. And we've been building to this since September 2nd when she entered the retrograde zone. I've been telling you about it for the last couple of months, preparing you for her eventual move into that phase. And there is more to tell to the tale. There is more to tell of the tale. And I'm going to get into that here in just a bit. This is also the week when Mercury squares Pluto. Yesterday, Pluto changed directions. It ended its 5.5-month retrograde, went retrograde in April and began to move forward. Pluto is not out of its retrograde shadow. You know how Suzanne also often calls it retrograde? Well, Pluto, being a slow-moving planet, being way in the heck out there, doesn't clear its retrograde for 4 months. So we may be reliving some of the shadow energy that we, and I don't mean reliving it in a bad way. It's not like if something, was happening during that period of time that didn't feel good to you, that you're doomed to repeat the whole of that. It's not that at all. It's just now you get to see the changes in your outer world that are reflected by what was going on the inner planes during Pluto's retrograde motion. And in that, then, you may see some new ways in which you can empower yourself and to become empowered. You may have even seen the structure and the forms of your life changing because Pluto was retrograde in Capricorn, which is a sign that rules form and structure and everything that holds us together, boundaries, all limits. All of those things, for instance, your skin and bones, all about holding you together. Right? Without your bones, what would you be? Just a puddle of meat on the floor. And if you had no skin, you would have all of your outward organs and what have you exposed, and it would not be a good thing. So we need form, we need structure. Pluto shoring up Saturn in that particular area because Saturn is also in Capricorn. But now with Pluto in forward motion, we'll be able to see the dynamics in the outer world of some of the shifts and plays that were going on within each of us. But more than that, Pluto is not just a planet that we think of as individualized. And it really isn't because it's so far out there and its transits are so slow. It's really more of a dynamic that takes us through the collective evolutionary shifts on the planet. So twice a year, we see this in-breath, out-breath with Pluto, and we can see how the outer world begins to shift in accordance to the things that were happening on the inner world. We just have to step back and look in to see what's happening with that. So we've had now Pluto shifting, and now Mercury comes up to square Pluto, and Mercury is the messenger planet. So what notes, I always think of this, when I see Mercury or I hear about Mercury, he's the fleet-footed messenger god. He's got the little wings on his feet and he's always delivering messages. I mean, that's his main function. He brings messages, and when he comes to a planet, he delivers a message. It's like new marching orders or something that are coming from the collective, or maybe from the galactic center or the sun. And now he's delivering new messages of challenge to Pluto. And what that will be, we'll just have to wait and see. Pluto rules the mind. Pluto rules our communication. So those are the two places I think we're going to be asked to shift as we look ahead to this Pluto in forward motion transit. So yesterday, I was saying, as I was getting ready for writing this article, I realized, oh my gosh, I have more knowledge than I thought I had access to about the Venus cycle, because for the longest time, before I was really doing human design or the gene keys, I was going around the country talking about the Mayan calendar. And I was talking about Mayan astrology. My favorite book at the time, this was back in 2011-ish, was How to Practice Mayan Astrology by Bruce Schofield and Barry Orr. And I was in love with Mayan astrology and the Mayan calendar. And I loved the beauty and the synchronicity and the coherence of that system to the other systems of around the world, Chinese astrology, to the Kabbalah, to wisdom from ancient cultures that, you know, we just barely remember because we've relegated it to the archives of mythology, right? With the advent of science and how it overtook all of the other disciplines in the world, these kinds of energies, these memories, were forgotten, and also forgotten in the rush to Christianity to overtake the world in terms of the religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs of the time as well. And of course, the Mayans were huge victims of all of that as the Catholics went out and settled through battles and wars, conquering, let's say, the Mayan civilization and imprinting over that civilization the religion of Christianity, of the Christian God. But we still hold lots of knowledge about the Mayans. There are codices and information, papers, hieroglyphics, things like that, of their writings that we are still discovering and are still decoding, if you will. But one of the things that we really know very powerfully that the Maya were engaged in is their study of the planet Venus. So to them, the most important planets were the sun and Venus. They didn't use Saturn. There's nowhere where you find Mercury or Mars or any of that kind of planet involved in their astrology. It was the sun and it was Venus. And Venus for them was feared. It was feared but valued for engaging them in the appropriate timing for the major actions that their civilization would take. So, for example, excuse me, their wars or battles, or when they would change leadership, things like that. They almost viewed the cycles of Venus as portents of what would come. Sorry, I'm getting too excited here. So for them, Venus was engaged in 4 major cycles, 4 periods, let's call them. Good morning, Asa. It's good to see you. Both won. Yes, the Pats won too. Okay. So the Venus cycle then had 4 periods, and the 4 periods delineated how people would function in society. So during this period, one thing would happen. During this period, another would happen, and what have you. And you have to understand that the Maya didn't come by this from, just like knowing. They had long observed the planet Venus. They're the ones that really understood the synodic cycle, if you will. That's what we call it, the synodic cycle of Venus, how she forms the pentagram in the sky when you look at her orbital progress. And they're the ones that really understood how she affected the planet. And for the Maya, Venus wasn't a feminine aspect at all. Venus was masculine. Venus was masculine energy. So the Maya timed their political events via Venus, their wars, battles, sacrifices. These were all ritualized events to them. They were ritualized and as a way, and they were seen as a way to really vent the pressures of society, to vent the society to you would okay, let's see if I can back this up. In our world, we have very few collective pressure releasing events. And as such, what we see building up in our society all the time is pressure. And then it comes out in horrible ways. Today's the anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting. That is a horrible way that the pressure of a society comes out. And then we see it splashed out in front of us in, an action that someone takes. And I'm not saying that the Mayan thoughts of war and sacrifice and battles and all of that were correct, but on some level they really understood that society builds up pressure and that they needed a collective release, and then everything could go back to peacefulness again. Okay. In their world, leadership changes were also portended by Venus's cycles. He, in their vernacular, was viewed as the civilizer, regulating both the animalistic and the destructive energies of humanity against the more positive, consensus building, hive mind energies of humanity. So Venus, viewed as masculine, was identified with the man god Quetzalcoatl for the Aztecs. By the way, when I say Mayan, that's just a misnomer. It's not just the Mayan. It was all of the Mesoamerican cultures. So that means the Maya, the Aztec, the Inca, the Olmec, and I mean some of the more ancient ones, as well as the newer or more neoclassical cultures like the Mayan. So with the man god Quetzalcoatl, who was actually Aztecan, and Kukulkan, who was the same, but in the Mayan version, just a different name. So the myth is a story of social ideals, impeccability, fornication, and a fall from grace. And it is a tale of the rise and fall of civilizations. And I'm going to actually read the myth to you, again, as related in the book by Bruce Schofield and Barry, or Mayan Astrology. And I'm guessing that this is a generalized myth. I'm sure there's more depth to it than just these couple of paragraphs, but it tells the tale. So bear with me here as I read this. In brief, the myth goes as follows. Quetzalcoatl was conceived and born miraculously after his mother swallowed a piece of jade, a virgin birth. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? He eventually assumed kingship of a perfect empire. Over time, he became obsessed with his own ritualistic spiritual practices and lost contact with the real world beyond his city. Meanwhile, strange and socially destabilizing events, some of a sexual nature, began to occur in his kingdom, and the populace began to sense that something was wrong. One day, evil sorcerers infiltrated Quetzalcoatl's compound and held a mirror to his face. Quetzalcoatl's appearance had been transformed through severe spiritual practices to such a significant degree that he recoiled from the sight of himself and was easily persuaded by the sorcerers to let them beautify him. Later, these sorcerers enticed him to take 5 cups of the alcoholic beverage pulque. Quetzalcoatl downed the drinks and became intoxicated. Dancing followed, and he called for his sister to join him in the wildness of the moment. The next morning, he awoke to find that he had committed sexual sins with his sister. Having broken one of the most important moral laws, the taboo against incest, he renounced his throne, left the city, and slowly made his way to the east. Upon his arrival at the seacoast, he sailed into the rising sun on a raft, or in some versions of the myth, built a funeral pyre and immolated himself. At his death in the fire, he became the planet Venus. Crazy, right? Crazy, crazy myth. So literally, not only do we see the rise and fall of a leader through, kind of a narcissistic sort of focus that eventually leads to his downfall and his demise, we see also mirrored to us the rise and fall of civilizations as new leaders come up to the surface and go through this same kind of phasing. And if we associate this, then if this myth, and this is just a myth, but it's a beautiful one if you think about the whole idea of there's redemption here, there's the fall from grace, all of that kind of information here. And it mirrors the Venus cycle. So now I want to talk about the Venus cycle itself. There are four main components to that cycle. One is the inferior conjunction. And according to the Maya and the Mesoamericans, this is where Venus's cycle begins, at the inferior conjunction. And this happens when Venus passes between the sun and the earth, and they come into an alignment, right? That is when Venus is closest to earth, and it happens only when Venus is in retrograde. Okay. And it lasts for a very short period of time. That inferior conjunction lasts only about 4 days. And our next inferior conjunction occurs on October 26th, right? And the second phase then is the superior conjunction. And this happens when Venus is farthest from the earth, on the other side of the sun. And that means that the sun falls between earth and Venus. This is a weeks long transit, as Venus moving around the sun to come back around takes much longer than the other way around. The third is the morning star phase. This happens after the inferior conjunction, right? And it is called the heliacal rise of Venus. This portends the fall, right? This is the time where they portended the fall. Often they appeared to have fear around the morning star rise of Venus because it portended something big, a big change in the society, maybe a change in leadership, war coming, or some major shakeup that would be felt through all of their society. And the morning star phase of Venus is coming October 31st. Coming to your neighborhood on the last day of October. Also a very sacred day in pagan religions, right? So a cross-quarter day, the witch's new year, huge day to have a morning star heliacal rise of Venus. Amazing. The evening star phase is the fourth, and that happens after superior conjunction. That is the phase we are just now coming out of, right? Because right now, Venus is really so close to the sun, you almost can't see her in the evening sky anymore. But, that's because she's disappearing into and getting ready for her inferior conjunction. Venus was the most dangerous of omens, the most feared of omens at the time of the heliacal rise. And of course, the inferior conjunction only led them to be, feeling that change coming, where leaders might be stricken down, the fall of those in power. That's an important thing to remember, right? And if we apply that to the myth, then the inferior conjunction is approximated where Quetzalcoatl's arrival here on Earth. By the way, they don't say in their myth where he came from, right? In their mythology, he just showed up here on the Earth. It's really kind of interesting to read their myths. The morning star phase is roughly the sins of drunkenness and incest to the time of Quetzalcoatl, really, the debauchery of that time period for him. The superior conjunction is the time period where he judged himself or was judged by the gods, and the evening star phase when he stepped down and walked earth as a mortal. So the important thing for us to know is, how does this phase show up in our times, right? Because it was pretty interesting to me. And this, again, is coming from this book, How to Practice Mayan Astrology by Bruce Schofield and Barry C. Orr. I can't even take credit for finding I can take credit for finding the book and for going, oh my gosh, I've got to share this information. But here are some of the newsworthy events that occurred at or just after the inferior conjunction of Venus in our own times. One, and you guys are going to get chills over this one, the Watergate arrests leading to Nixon's downfall. That happened in an inferior conjunction time. The downing of Korean Flight 007 downed by Russia in accident. 300 and some people, I think it was, killed in the accidental downing of that plane. The fall of Mikhail Gorbachev in Russia. The election of inexperienced and agenda-driven Republicans in 1994 who really rocked the political scene. And then in January of 1998, another little frisson, President Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. The Watergate, and in January of 1998, President Clinton impeached because of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Amazing things, right, people? Because we're right in the midst of this right now. Again, we're in the midst of this. Only instead of Watergate arrests, we have Mueller arrests. We haven't named this. This is the Russia Gate, I guess you could say. It all began about, the election and the Russians' interference in the election. But it is so much more than that. So if there's anyone left that does not think that Trump will fall, or that leaders of some sort will fall, and it's not just in our country, by the way, this can be around the world. There are some major shakeups in the offing with this particular Venus retrograde and this particular cycle. It's like this grand play that is always being enacted time over time. And I would say that some cycles of Venus are more important than others, or certainly more effective in bringing change. I would say this is one of those times where it will be very effective because Venus, first of all, changes direction in the sign of Scorpio, a sign we know of to be intense and about passion and jealousy and literally places of self-sabotage where the stinger of the scorpion can be felt as passive aggression, as things that you don't see coming up behind you, as secrets being revealed, etc. And then her retrograde, including where she has her own natal rulership in the sign of Libra. Interesting stuff. And like I always say, I cannot make this stuff up, right? I can't make this up. This is literally happening in our world right now, in our sky right now. So let's take a look and see what people are thinking out here. I don't want people to fall, just balance. Debbie says that, yes, unfortunately, when the pendulum swings, it often has a lot of momentum, and it swings completely to the other side, and it swings back, and it swings back, and finally it comes to rest somewhere here in the middle. I would say that we are not necessarily at the big end of a swing. Perhaps we are somewhere in the process of that pendulum slowing down and coming to some kind of equilibrium. Kristen, good morning. Any other comments out here? Diane Pegram, gah, I have so much to do. I guess I'll rethink my list. I think she's probably talking about the fact the moon is void, of course. Londa says, ooh, 2:00 is when I have a meeting to do a blueprint. It'll be perfect. 2:01 p.m. Wait until 2:02 and you'll be good. And Anne says, hello, out of breath, nearly forgot my tea. The funny thing is I always have my coffee sitting here with me, but I never really get to drink it because I'm talking. So by the time I'm done talking, my coffee is cold. And then I have to either reheat it or dump it down the sink. So it's really kind of funny that I even have my coffee here. So let's see. Anybody else have any comments? I will definitely be writing an article up this probably today, tomorrow about this more in depth. And then the third big news And I don't know. I don't know. I know this has happened before, but it's just suddenly all in my face, right? All of this stuff is in my face. Maybe because I'm paying attention to it because I come to you every morning now, at least Monday through Friday. And so now I'm looking at what is going on every day as opposed to before where it would be like, oh, really? Okay, that's great. Nice. Whatever. So here I looked at the month of October from the standpoint of human design and through the gene keys, obviously, because they're mirrors of one another, one deeper. Gene keys, much deeper dive into the gates. And I looked at October 1st, the sun, gate 18. Yowza. Then gate 48. Then gate 57, gate 32, gate 50, gate 28, gate 44. Oh my gosh. All of those are on the spleen. All of those are fear gates. All of those double as paralysis points in our lives. And now the sun is going to be sitting at the same places that Venus transited over, because they're getting ready to come into a conjunction, right? So of course the sun is going to be transiting through those same places and sitting there for, 5 to 6 days each time. And so today the sun sitting at the gate 18, the gate where we have the ideal of judgment, of perfection seeking, of critical analysis, it sits down on the spleen and it heads down toward the root center. It's very far away from the throat. So it's this energy. Remember, we talked about it, I think, last week with the idea of opinions, which is sitting on the ajna. 18 and 17 are programming partners. And they are where we have to really watch how we say what we say and when or if we even have the right to say anything to anybody about critical information, critical analysis, or judgment, or whatever. But we also use this energy on ourselves, becoming overly judgmental of our own actions, of our own foibles, of our own problems. And so this begins the month of October, right? This idea now that the sun moves through all of the gates of the spleen. Well, maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them. In fact, even into November, we don't finish with the gates of the spleen with the sun until November 5th. Interesting, right? And interesting that the earth then throws up the challenge or the trigger, if you will, during this time to the fear. And this was something that one of my ahas yesterday. So let me see if I can recount this, because I laid in bed last night thinking about this and I couldn't go to sleep because I was thinking about this, is that this idea of the relationship between the sun and the earth in our human design. And the sun, of course, is the one thing that I can look at that will tell me what your life purpose is, or a good piece of the information that is you comes from the conscious placement of your sun, the sun. But there was also an earth placement, right? So those first two numbers in the black column of your human design chart are the sun and the earth. And they show us a good chunk about who you are and what you're here to do, what your challenges are going to be. So it's almost like the sun has this purpose, and then the earth throws down the gauntlet and says, oh yeah, then this is what you've got to work through. And for us now with the sun at gate 18, at least for today and tomorrow, the sun at 18, focusing on how we are judging, how we are perfecting, and how does sometimes this concept of perfection stop us from taking action moving forward, right? And the earth throws up the gauntlet, or throws down the gauntlet, by saying, okay, those are just opinions. How much is truth about what it is that you're thinking? How much truth is there in your thought process? And how much of it is just so much of your opinion? Right? So we get the lessons learned about when to share opinion, the rightful place for opinion versus the rightful place for perfection energy. As we move through the month, then we see even more of this, right? As we get on to the 3rd, I guess I should probably turn my calendar. The 3rd must be Wednesday. That Wednesday, the sun moves into gate 48, the gate we all know and love as the fear of inadequacy. I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I haven't got enough credentials. I haven't got enough studies, etc., right? And the earth throws down the gauntlet at gate 21, the gate of control, right? The gate that is really about aligning your resources, lining your resources up for your benefit, but can be used as a control measure, right? Controlling what you actually are out there doing, because the fear is that I'm going to fail or I'm going to be inadequate. In this case, it's inadequacy. And later in the month, August, I'll talk about being in the past, October 8th, the sun moves into 57, which is literally a gate of the psychic awareness, right? It is very much about being intuitive, in knowingness. And it is the place, the fear of the future, right? The fear of the future. And the earth throws down the gauntlet through gate 51, the gate of shock, which ultimately becomes an awakening, right? How many times have we had something big that's happened to us and it becomes the food or the fodder for our awakening to something? And on it goes through the month like this, right? So now we can look at our own charts a little bit differently. Now we can look at the sun as being this focus energy of why it is you're here, why you're incarnated right now, and your earth placement throwing down the gauntlet. This is what you're going to have to surmount, right? In the gene keys, it's shown to us through the shadow of that particular gate or that particular gene key. So if we look at the gene key 17, what we see, let me grab my little gene keys book, and I'm going to tell you that gate 18 is literally the gate of perfection, but in the lowest expression, it is the shadow of judgment. It is the gift of integrity, and perfection becomes the siddhic state, the siddhi. Integrity. What does that mean, right? Integrity. Because integrity has a lot of, connotation associated with it as we think of it as a moralistic view, but it's really about being in your own skin. Remember, we talked about that too. Being in your own skin, being true to you. So what is true for you? And not then getting into judgment, because we don't know in our interactions on a day-to-day basis what is true for the other person. So how can we possibly sit in judgment? That's the question. And how can we sit in judgment of our own selves when we have really, when you're looking at it through such a clouded lens? Debbie said this to me last week. She said, step back and look in or look down into your life, because sometimes you're so close to it, you can't see the meaning. You can't see the purpose behind everything. That's how everything's happening in its right and perfect way to your benefit for some reason, even if it's something that you don't necessarily want to experience, but it's happening for some reason to your benefit. But when you're in the midst of it, you can't see it that way. You have to step back and look in. So anyway, October showing us a lot of faces, a lot of potential. And not, of course, every October is there a Venus retrograde to boot. In fact, there isn't. It's the first time in a long time that Venus retrogrades happened right now, when Venus will be retrograding backwards into a sign she rules, and out of a sign that's known for depth and passion and that scorpion sting. So an interesting month. And that's why I said at the beginning, hold on to your hats, step back, become observers. Some things may be totally out of your hands. In fact, I would say a lot of what goes on this month is totally out of your hands. But I find it interesting that no matter what happens, for example, in the FBI investigation now of Kavanaugh, even if he is brought to a point where he is affirmed on the Supreme Court, confirmed on the Supreme Court, a fall is coming for someone in power. A fall from grace, a fall from the power structure, and it is going to be all right and perfect, correct? Right? Because the election is coming right after this all. We have the election. It's just an amazing time I think we live in. If we can stay out of the drama and the day-to-day drama and trauma of it all, and someday we could look back and we go, oh yeah, that's why that happened. That's why that happened. So anyway, a month of a lot of energy, a lot going on, a lot of depth, a lot of juiciness, a lot of disruptive sort of things, perhaps. And it might only just be the surface of it that we see, right? That the real game is afoot after we get to the end of October, between the 26th and the inferior conjunction and the 31st, where we get to the heliacal rise of Venus and the aftermath of that in early November. It's like a play. I just can't get that. It's like the stage and all of these players on the play. It's like, a Shakespearean drama. We're living out a Shakespearean drama. At any rate, that's what I have for you today. I know it's a lot, and stay out of all of the fear around it. Stay as cool and calm and collected as you can, knowing that there is a higher purpose at play here that we may not always be privy to and not always be able to see very clearly. Londa says, holy moly. Michelle sends us hearts. Debbie, oh, okay, no other comments. I think I stunned almost everybody into silence today. Mimi, just wow. I know, just wow. Imagine my surprise yesterday when I was just going to write up a little article about the month of October. I mean, I was almost so flabbergasted. I was up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm walking around my house. My husband's looking at me like, "Are you insane?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. I am insane. There's so much going on. I don't even know how to write all of this." And that's when I realized you just can't write all of this. You just can't. You're going to have to break it into pieces because there's too many big pieces going on. So there we have it. I'm done for today. Remember, today I am experiencing RTT, rapid transformational therapy. I am completely and totally and utterly open to transforming whatever it is in my life that has stopped me. That is the whole point of this therapy, and I can't wait to experience it so I can share it with you all. I also, in my newsletter yesterday, gave you the links to go and visit Londa Damon's website, the Sirius Library, or at least her part of the website, to experience some of the wonderful Christ healing energies and physical healing energies that Londa brings to the planet. It's deep. It's amazing. I've experienced healing from her in person, but she does the type of healing that can be done, via telewaves, teleporting. I'm not even sure how to say it, whether it's through Zoom or whether it's through prayer, through connection of the energy between hearts. So check that out. If you didn't get the newsletter, I will post the link to her website in the chat after the show is over this morning. Let's see, Asa, good luck, and I can't wait to hear about it. Thank you, Asa. She also says, being my birthday month, I'm a little nervous on the transformations coming. A good chunk of my family are Libras. My husband, his twin brother, my son, my nephew, my grandson, two of my grandsons, but they're Scorpios. They're the later end. I have a lot of friends, my sister-in-law. It's amazing to me how many October birthdays there really are. And I'm watching all of their lives now just to see, what does that mean for them? What does that mean for them? It'll be fascinating. So, let me say one more time, a lot of the information I shared with you this morning came from this book, How to Practice Mayan Astrology by Bruce Orr, or Barry Orr, excuse me, and Bruce Schofield, The Zolkeen Calendar and Your Life Path, Remote Energy Healing. Thank you, Diane. That was the term I was looking for. Couldn't get to it. I'm still flabbergasted by all the stuff that's going on. So, in the meantime, everyone, take care. Have a wonderful day. Mwah! Much love to you all. And I will see you tomorrow morning right here, 8 a.m. I'm not sure what we'll dig into tomorrow, but we'll see. All right. Talk to you later. Bye for now.